Hi everyone, my name is Sandra Osorio and today I'll be presenting Sericea Lespedeza, a warm season legume to be considered. So first, I'm going to talk of some of the unique properties that this legume has. First being that it's a warm season perennial legume. This fact was very cool for me because before I used to think that legumes grew only in cool season or in cold weather. So this is a very cool fact that I just learned whenever I was making some research on this topic. Also, Lespedeza, that's how I'm going to refer to it now, is very good at low soil pH, very different from other legumes like alfalfa, which is considered the queen of forages, which does well with low soil pH. So when I talk about low soil pH, Lespedeza can actually grow at a pH of 5. However, it will perform better if it grows at a pH of 5.8 or 6. In addition, it is a drought tolerant species and also is deep-rooted, which helps with nutrient and water uptake. And other fact that is very cool about Lespedeza is that it has a good nutritive value with a crude protein ranging from 12 to 15% and a TDN up to 55% or 60%. And also it has anti-parasitic properties. Mainly, this research has been observed mainly with small ruminants like sheep and goats. So what about Lespedeza? How we should graze it and how we should produce hay on it? There are some things that we need to watch for whenever we are making our grazing or hay management considerations. First, cutting height is key because as the plant grows, it matures, therefore the nutritive value of the forage will decrease. And by meaning that, it means that it will be lignified. Therefore, the nutritive value of the forage, as I mentioned, it will be lower. Something that I want to point out as well is that in the UGA extension forage sites, they recommend utilizing the AU Grazer variety. It will get lignified, however, its management and yield, its management and yield is recommended from our UGA specialist. So whenever we're grazing, we want to graze this forage on a height between 8 to 15 inches. Over here, I put some pictures of small ruminants because as we can observe here, this legume can be quite tall and it looks kind of a bush. And small ruminants like sheep and goats actually like to graze more from bush types rather than grazing types like on the ground for grasses or other legumes. That's very unique and different from cattle because cattle will graze about 70 to 80% of their grazing will be from what they find in the ground. Also, for hay, it's very important to do that hay cutting between a height of 15 to 24 inches. The taller, the more yield will have. However, the taller it gets, more maturity and more lignification will occur. So then you can compromise a little bit nutritive value. So I already talked about grazing and hay considerations, but how it really works and how it impacts cattle productivity or ruminants productivity. So in Auburn University in 2007, they performed an experiment in which they had a Lespedeza group with 16 head and a control group that was given a Bermuda grass hay, 16 steers as well. Both groups, each head was fed with 6 pounds of soybean hulls, and the Lespedeza group had Lespedeza hay at Livitu, while the control group had Bermuda grass hay at Livitu. And I'll show the results briefly. And what they observed is that the Lespedeza group had a higher average daily gain, while its hay intake was lower when compared to the Bermuda grass hay. However, the supplement intake of the soybean hulls was similar for both treatments, and the total intake for the Lespedeza treatment was lower. Therefore, beef steers consuming Lespedeza were more efficient. And this means that they had a better gain to feed ratio, as we can observe here. I calculated, and the Lespedeza group had a greater gain to feed ratio because they actually gain a little bit more weight with less feed, meaning that they're more efficient. Something, a unique characteristic about Lespedeza is that it has a high concentration of tannins. And you may be wondering, what are tannins? So tannins are secondary plant compounds that are found on every plant. However, with species like Lespedeza, it can be observed in greater concentrations. And you may be wondering what are tannins, but tannins is actually that bitter taste you get whenever you drink wine. So that bitter taste are actually the tannins. And these tannins have the potential of decreasing methane emissions. And how exactly it reduces methane emissions? Over here, we can observe a protozoa, which is a microorganism that is found in the rumen of ruminants. And these microorganisms have a symbiotic relationship with methanogens, which are the main microorganisms in the rumen in charge of methane production. So it has been observed that tannins have a directly effect on methanogens. Perhaps it's toxic to them, or it can be toxic for both the protozoa and the methanogens. And if it's not toxic, then it decreases their number. However, this is very interesting for me because tannins, research in tannins has been there for a very long time. There's not a specific mode of action for tannins. So there's more space for research and opportunity of research to actually know the exact mechanism on tannins on methane emissions. So right now I'm going to show you some publications on tannins that come from Lespedeza. So on a trial on goats consuming Lespedeza, they observed that the goats that were consuming this forage actually produced 57% less methane when compared to the control group. And a recent experiment in the University of Florida, in which they were feeding Bermuda grass hay and Lespedeza at different levels. So 0% Lespedeza, 25, then 50, then 75, and then 100%. So they had 5 treatments. They did not observe any effective reductions in methane emissions. However, when they did the statistics, they observed that the highest levels of Lespedeza hay given to cattle actually had a greater concentration of tannins, and therefore there was a reduction of methane emissions. Which this means that there's more space on research on Lespedeza and its effects on methane production, as well as performance of our livestock. And with that, I want to close up and thank you very much for watching.